I've got ranunculus, astilbe, lisianthus, monarda, larkspur, one lone scabiosa, some astrantia, stock, again, one stem of verbena, sweet pea, the flower and the vine, two light blue delphinium, and a hydrangea. I will just sort of fold over and make a little cushion here, and I just want to make sure that my pokey ends are not, sticking up or into the middle of that chicken wire nest, because I do have some delicate stems here that I don't want to get torn up. The fastest way for me to cover all of my mechanics and get a good bit of color is just to start with this blue hydrangea. I'm gonna put it sort of right down into the center. And I like it to sort of be in the center but spill off to one side. That way I can kind of see it from a little more than half of the arrangement. I'm gonna take that same blue, and I don't want to make this really strict and color blocked. I like to group my colors together, but I also like these colors to really blend and bleed through the whole arrangement. So take a little bit of that delphinium, pop him over here. And clean him up. Extend that blue, and then I'm going to shoot a little bit of that same light blue over to the other side. I like to really build out my lines first, once my mechanics are covered. So this is a $125 design. So I don't want to make it small. I want to get as much size out of this as I can while still keeping it full. So building my lines now kind of tell me, all right, Abby, here's where you need to go so that I don't cut my stems too short. I'm placing this larkspur out to my exterior for a couple of reasons. One, it builds out that framework, but two, it is one of the only lighter, almost white flowers that I have, and so to marry the container with it, I'm pulling it all out so that we don't have, all of your white down here on the bottom, that you have it sort of pulled throughout the arrangement. And what's so nice about the container is that it's sort of a creamy color, but it has a grayish blue sort of shade in that depression there. It's a faux antique look, but it really is working with this palette really well. Next I've got my stock, and this is a line, but it's a thicker, more mass-like line flower, so I tend to keep it lower to the base when I'm designing with it. And also the bottom blooms of a stock are going to fade a lot faster than the blooms at the top. So I oftentimes don't like them to float really high above the mass of my design. It is important as you're designing to really look at all sides, especially if you don't want it to have a backside that becomes really flat. You have to keep it turning and moving. So oftentimes I'll make my placements and then turn it and even readjust things from a side angle. And I have this other stem. I'm gonna clean up a little bit these extra leaves. And I think he is going to balance out the other cluster of Lisianthus on the other side. I think I will take off this bud. He's distracting me a little bit from being able to see that top Lisianthus. And next up, I have this Astilbe that needs to get in water fast or he may not make it. I always clean off all of my foliage from Astilbe because it does tend to wilt quickly, and I don't want the stem, feeding any of its energy into those leaves. All of the water that it's drinking really needs to go to the flowers. When you're starting out with this style, I highly recommend choosing analogous or monochromatic color palettes because they really allow for the most discovery and play. So for instance, right now I've had my Monarda on this side, but as I'm building out, I really think I might want to change him to the other side. If this was a more complex color palette, it would be difficult to move around these stems in so many different ways without kind of messing up the balance. So I think if you're newer at this style, definitely go easy on yourself and only sort of focus on one thing at a time, which is, texture and shape. And then once you have a really great grasp of that, you can move on to adding in some really interesting color palettes and combinations. I decided to make a couple alterations here. I took out one of my Astilbe and traded it in for another little tuft of hydrangea because I really felt like my blue was getting lost and I wanted that to be a bigger part of the color story. So sometimes you have to make those last changes to the design, which is nice when you have a retail shop that you have that ability to. If I was a studio florist, I might not have as much product to play with. So I find that to be a benefit for me, is that I kind of always have a cooler at my disposal to play with and make those easy changes. So I've got this stem of verbena. It has sort of an interesting shape to it. So I really want to make sure that he floats high enough that he can be appreciated and seen. And he's got a nice little blend of purpley blues in him. And one little ranunculus bud that I again look from that side angle to see where it's feeling a little flat and where I could use a little bit more movement. And then lastly, I have this weird little scabiosa that's bicolor who's perfect for this arrangement. And I am going to let him fly high above the rest of the design on this side. I feel pretty happy with it. These last little movements are so important to the success of this garden style design, looking fresh and springy and not wilty. You want each flower that you have in this arrangement to shine and have a moment and not get so layered and clustered that you can't see all of the product that you have in it.